Talking. And today we're talking about something that is of utmost concern to all Nigerians, food security. As always, we love it when you're a part of the conversation, so I'll let you know how you can be a part of it. The WhatsApp number to send your messages to is 0809 4440981. You can also tweet at smooth981. And of course, the phone line's open so you can give us a ring. The number is 0144898981. Now, Nigeria is such a beautifully diverse nation. Now, this diversity comes from its people, its climate, its weather, and everything else in between. Now, it is the most populous country in Africa, and it certainly faces its own challenges in addition to the blessings that it has. Now, the significance of food security, I think it does go beyond just sustenance. It's a cornerstone, or it's seen as a cornerstone for national well-being, for economic stability, and even a social harmony. Now, despite the vast agricultural potential that Nigeria has, there is still a bit of a constant struggle with different issues that continue to affect this food chain. Our guest this morning is the founder and CEO of the renowned organization WCCI, which is the Women's Chamber of Commerce, Industry, Agriculture, and Mines in Nigeria. Okay, I will say that again. The Women's Chamber of Commerce, Mines, Agriculture, and Industry in Nigeria, Chief Ambassador Zainab Mohammed. And we're talking about addressing the concerns surrounding food security. Good morning, Zainab, and welcome to Lagos Talks.
Good morning. How are you today?
Very
well. Good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for being here on the show. And this is something that's very important. Just some statistics, right? Now, this year, there are expectations that 26.5 million people will grapple with high levels of food insecurity. And this is something that the government has disclosed. 9 million children are at risk of acute malnutrition. That's a large number. 2.6 million could face severe acute malnutrition. Now, of the 18.6 million people who are experiencing food insecurity today, 3.3 million of them live in the northeastern states, in the northeastern region of the country. So, Zainab, I'm going to come to you about this. Now, in the context of Nigeria, what are the major challenges that are making this food security be some kind of dream?
Thank you, my dear. Before I answer that question, let's understand what is food security, right? And then we'll now put it into all this context. And for me, do we have accurate statistics? Those statistics being rolled out, I have my doubt about it, because that will be more, because we don't have accurate statistics. Then two, what is food security? Food security is lack of not having food, not having access to food, not having access to qualitative food, and not being able to even produce more food. So what are we talking about when we keep saying food security government? It's not all about government anymore. It's about me, you, and everyone. It's a collective work to address the insecurity in our society today. And when I say that, is when you see something, say something. Our gatekeeper, the communities, the rural areas, the farmlands that these people, the bandits, the insurgents go into to either kidnap, rape, or maim or kill farmers, or actually destroy their farm goods, is in a community. So we need to start looking from that grassroots, and we need to start talking about it from the traditional gatekeeper, from the community leaders to the traditional rulers at the national level, to the politics, to the politicians, to the government. But everybody hands must be on deck. And I know some communities are coming up with their own local vigilantes now, which is what I'm talking about. But let's go back to food security and the statistics.
Yes.
In the Northwest, where most of our food actually come out from, because the arable green lands that comes from that area, there's a lot of large quantities of farmers. And so we need to be realistic. Out of, well, I'm about to say out of school children, but the statistic being quoted about 9 million and things, how did we come about that statistics? Because the kids roaming on the street in one state is over 1 million. Do you get that?
I hear
So
you.
I will not go into the statistic aspect. We know the problem. So how do we provide solutions to this problem? This is what we should be discussing, and this is where every nook and cranny of Nigeria, we should be able to come together and start providing solutions to this thing. Like an old adage said, there will be no intruder in your community without the member of that community be part of it. So if we are looking at little clusters, small clusters of community, and an intruder is there coming to a particular environment or house, we all know it. And we need to start naming, we need to start addressing it. We'll come to that later. But basically, we need to start talking about how do we have enough food? How do we have surplus food? How do we have food stored? And how do we have qualitative and healthy food for our citizens in Nigeria today? So we need to start talking about that, and we need to start providing solutions. Under our WCCI platform, we have various clusters. And one of the clusters we have is the agricultural cluster. And what we do in agricultural cluster is actually teach women the innovative way of agricultural farming today. And by planting vegetables, planting things in containers in your house, we're telling people remove your flowers and make an economic flowers, or don't plant flowers, plant vegetables. Plant things that you can eat and can sell to your community. So that is what we're doing in our own little way. So we are proffering solutions. So we want every other person to hop on that and start proffering solutions. And then when we get to the government angle, of course, they are the one that have the red and green pen, and they are the one that can sign. But we need to be able to have political willpower to do it. I remember one of the past leaders who died some few years ago said there is no crisis without the government involvement. And we are saying that indirectly. We are saying that indirectly because we cannot continue to have crises in the same zone over and over, and then we have military presence in that zone. We need to clinically start estraying this, and we need to talk about it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief Zainab, for that. The WhatsApp number is 0809 444 0981. And of course, you can give us a ring. The phone number is 014489 Now, when you've just spoken about what your group does, what your organization does with trying to teach and encourage women, particularly with these agricultural practices. So are there some of these sustainable practices that perhaps, if implemented on a larger scale, could actually help to enhance the production of food and even address this food insecurity, this looming crisis?
Without a doubt, my dear, if I live in this, let's say zone A here in my own corner, and then the back of my compound, I'm planting tomato and pepper, and I'm at the end of every cultivations, I'm having maybe 6, 7 bags of tomato. I'm not going to eat it alone. I can consume it alone. The highest I can consume, including storing some in the freezer, will be no more than 1 or 2 bags. So what do I do with the remaining 4 bags? Is to either sell to the community or take it to the supermarket and sell them. So there will be access to good food, quality food, hygienically packed food. And hopefully what we do as well is preach the organic way of farming. not the fertilizer and all this GMO. We preach the organic way of farming for health reason. So if 10 houses on one street can do that, or let's say community farming in an estate, we have a lot of estates all around. So let's have 1 hectare within the estates to have community farming, which is the same as the clusters. So we have community farming where each in a hectare you can plant more than 3-4 different varieties of vegetables that are consumed on a daily basis. We plant yam in sacks now. So in a small space, in a small 100-meter or 200-meter space, in the corner of your backyard, in your kitchen, you can actually plant 20 to 50, in fact, up to 100 bags of sack of used cement bag. So that's 200 tubers of yam. So if we can have those cluster farming in community estates, we will be addressing food security within our community and the country at large, because then everybody, then we leave the big farming, which now reduce the security protection to just few farmers of the large scale farming, maybe for export or for big organizations. So you don't need to start looking at how to protect the small farmers, the medium farmers, but we need to preach community farming. Each estate now, whilst you have your car park, let's have a space where we can have immediate vegetables. People buy, and that's job creation, because you have to employ someone who would tend to those vegetables garden. So we need to start doing that. And I think it's high time we take responsibility for feeding ourselves and ensuring that we have healthy, qualitative food and excess food to store as well.
All right, we're speaking with Chief Zainab Mohammed. She's from the WCCI, and we're speaking about addressing the 2024 concerns surrounding food security, obvious challenges, and of course, strategies for the future as well. We'll continue the conversation on the other side. Stay with us. It's Lagos Talks on Smooth 98.1. We'll be back on in a few minutes, in about under 2 minutes.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Lifestyle goals for just simplified service that is designed just for you. Yeah, we thought you might like all of that. That is why we specially created Providence Bank for you. To take care of your daily experiences at Providence Bank, we believe that banking should be all about you and your business and how to get you to the next level. If you do not already have a Providence Bank account, please speak with our business concierge on 0700 77 684 387 or email businessconcierge@providencebank.com to switch to a future forward banking experience. Providence Bank, future forward bank.
Let's take a critical look at your lifestyle first. It is just like in a city that hardly sleeps, so many people want and many more on the edge. One thing is likely to happen. System shuts down. Helping you discover facts about your health and exposing your access to well-being is relevant information. Tune in to New Health on the Drive and make that connection with your professional.
All right, we're coming back on.
Every Thursday at 5:50 p.m.
You're listening to Lagos Talks on Smooth 98.1. It's Zibby here. We're talking about addressing the concerns of food security. Our guest this morning is Chief Ambassador Zainab Mohammed, and she's from the WCCI. Just a quick background of the WCCI. It's the Women's Chamber of Commerce, Mines, Agriculture, and Industry in Nigeria. Now, just before we went on the break, Chief Zainab, we were speaking about the clusters, but I'm curious about this. What are some of the limitations that the small scale farmers, and in this context, also the women farmers, have faced or especially face when they are trying to go about doing their bits, not just for themselves, but for their communities as well?
Well, I think we're the highly risk species right now in the world. And in this climate of the part of the world, I think it's just so sad to say, but that's the reality. It's just the reality. Um, Both old and young and child are being exposed to the most horrible crime scenes because of wanting to feed their family. Women are being kidnapped, being raped, brutally murdered. And it is sad, but it's happening on a daily basis. And the only way we can address this, because like I said earlier before the break, for the government to address this and come up with sincerity is to have a political willpower. And for me, I question that because both down to the community level where the crisis gets worse. Like I said earlier, the statistics are things that are the ones that we know. The ones that we don't know, and some of us who are grassroots women advocate, the one that we see on a daily basis or hear on some of our platforms on a daily basis are more like a nightmare stories, something you see on horror movies, but it's happening in real life to our girl child, to our mothers, our aunties, the women who can no longer go to the farm. Recently, just before the Christmas, I'll tell you this case story. Somewhere in Katsina, there was a radio program as well, and it breaks my heart. And as I'm talking to you, I'm having goosebumps. Women are complaining that their children cry to bed, not because they are ill or something, but they cry to bed because there is nothing to give to the children to eat. The cry of hunger, and that is already emotionally, physically, psychologically damaging the woman. So one people think, oh, it's just because you are being raped in the farm, you can't go to the farm because you don't have, it goes beyond that. Once a woman mentally is damaged, believe me, the society within that environment is damaged. She doesn't function. She sees her children crying to bed. So what do? We need to start advocating this innovative way of farming. We need to be able to come together, create a synergies with the government through the Ministry of Agri, through the Ministry of Women Affairs, and start training these women how to actually do farm within their home setting. Women are being killed. Children are being killed. Children are dying. You mentioned malnutrition. The extreme malnutrition is happening. You don't even have food to eat, and then there are no clean water to drink. So even if you're drinking the water, what do? Damaging more of the cells that are already weakened because there's no nutrient coming in. My dear, it's heartbreaking, but we need to talk about these things. We need to bring it to the fore. We need government to start talking directly with non-state actors. It's non-state actors who, some of us who are into developmental program advocating for women, we need to sit down and start having a dialogue and bringing in this conversation about the alternative way of feeding our nation, the alternative way of keeping our women and young girls safe from being sex slaves. In fact, I will go further to say it's not just being sex slave, being killed. They are being harvested for their organs. So that is, it's a multiple complex crisis. So how do we deal with this? is what you are doing. And I give you, kudos to it, because you are bringing it to the open. Let's start talking. And I hope some of the government officials are listening to some of this conversation. We have to profile solutions together collectively. And how do we do that? Is to bring in innovative ideas. If a woman can farm yam, potatoes, tomatoes, pepper, onions at home, that is mostly the basic things she needs.
No,
right?
Okay, go ahead. Yes. Yes.
No, go ahead. Ask your question.
All right. You stated something about perhaps coming together to find innovative ways to ensure agricultural production. And I'm curious, one of the biggest innovations that has seemed to be working across industries is the use of technology. How likely is this to have an impact with the demographic that you work with? And how easily can it be accessed?
Accessibility is a question mark. We talk about this beautiful innovation, technology. Yes, at the grassroots, some of this doesn't work because that's the reality. But what we are advocating is we sit down together and talk. Yeah, for the big time farmers, you can have the innovative technology to work on that level. But at the small scale farming, we are talking about nano and micro farmers here. You don't need that. All you need is to be able to give them that supportive environment. And what do we call supportive environment? Yes, maybe provide them. Some of these sacks are like as low as 200 naira. So why can't we buy those sacks and give to some of these community farmers? Once you're doing community farming, the security issue is addressed naturally because everybody is a stakeholder in that farm, and it's not somewhere outskirts of town, it's within each community. So there's enough food. We need to start thinking, well, I don't have a box anymore, but thinking outside the box. I've broken my box a long time ago, so I'm just figuring out how to survive without the going back and running into the box. But we need to start thinking outside the box. We think at the large scale, we think at the medium scale, we think about the micro and nano scale. And that's when you think about, when you do community farming, you do household farming, there will be less insecurity. Okay, so there will be a lot of things for people to do. Let me just take us back a little. When we used to have youth centers, we used to have community centers at rural level. At every rural level, we have the 774 local government as the country is. We have community centers, we have youth centers. Young boys and girls growing up go to those youth centers to learn something. You don't even leave school without learning something. You learn either something. We have technical school, we have the home economic, we have the agricultural thing. All those things seems to be simmering out of the society. So you have kids wandering around, you have kids learning from social media. 90% of our vices today come from that youthful restiveness and what they learn from social media. So we need to turn our social media into a productive and a learning platform for the younger generation. In some part of the world, what we see here, the sex we see on social media here is not on that. You have them as a training platform. So we need to start bringing back the old culture that works for us. We need to have youth centers where people go there to do mentorship, to do counseling. There are not even counseling in schools today. So you need to start changing the mindset of a younger generation to understand what it feels to work for themselves, what it feels to have a creative mindset. We're using those words today. It was not used then in 20, 30 years ago, but it was what we were doing. You were creating a mindset where kids can think for themselves, where kids can actually grow innovatively. But now we're using those words and we're not practicing it. So we need to go back to basics. We need to go back to family values. We need to go back to our family ethics. in order to be able to clean some of these vices we are seeing today. When you see the military or the police bring some of these boys on the TV that they were caught doing this thing, you wonder how old they are and where did they start this from. So we need to start looking at changing mindset from an early age, because all the kids today, you see a child in the car going to school, being dropped by the parent, and they're on Android phone, for crying out loud. You know, so we really need to be intentional if we really have to start talking and addressing these vices. The government, the people who make the policies, the decision maker, we need to sit down together and start looking, okay, this can work, this can work. We will take over doing this at this level. You take over doing this at that level. And you'll see there will be a balance. And we'll have a society that we're proud to be part and growing up and part of those who made decisions.
Now, with situations like this, a lot of expectation is placed on the government, and rightfully so. However, is there a role for citizens and communities to play?
Absolutely. I said it at the beginning of our conversation. It's not just about the government alone. The government are decision makers, they are policy makers. It's time we sit together. It's everybody's responsibility, to be honest with you. From the local grassroots to the community to the state level, come to the national level. We need to be talking about this. Me and you are not government official, but we're talking about it and we're proffering solutions. And I believe that 80 to 90% of those who listen to the conversation we are having right now will try to practice what we're talking about. You go to social media, you download videos, you look for organizations that are providing trainings for alternative farming and innovative 21st century farming. So we need to start having this conversation. It's not about government alone. If I'm telling you, let's assume my state, I talk to the Commissioner of Agric and he does not translate that conversation into the government or to the governor or to the executive council that, well, I had a meeting with some NGOs or CBOs or some advocates, and this is what they talked about. Your Excellency, can we bring them on a large scale to see how we can train other people? Can we bring them on to see how we can, explore that conversation further? If he doesn't take it to that executive meeting, the governor will not know. So decision will now stop at his desk. And what does he do with it? If he doesn't do anything with it, then we have to go back into our own cluster and start saying, okay, you go on national TV, you go on radio, and you say, oh, we have this program. If you are interested, come, let's do it. You go to traditional rulers in your community and say, we need some of the young men and women. We need to train them on this. We need to start doing that. It's our collective responsibility. If you think you are sitting in a glass house and you are safe from the insecurity in the country, boy, that is the most fairy tale story anyone can think about. If it doesn't affect you directly, it affects you indirectly. So even if you are high and mighty and have 100
You're muted.
Go to the market. They can't buy the food you are used to. If you think you can import those goods from other parts of the world, if you probably hired a private jet to bring it before, you hire it at 2 million naira, now you're hiring it at 20 million naira. So indirectly or directly, it affects you.
Indeed. You're listening to Lagos Talks on Smooth 98.1. Do stay with us. We'll wrap up the conversation on the other side. We're talking about addressing the challenge of food security in Nigeria. Stay with us. Oh, interesting. We'll just take a quick break, play some music for about 5 minutes, and then we'll come back on.
That's fine.